Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am checking in on my goals. So every 3 months, I check in on the reading goals that I set for myself this year, just to see where I'm at. And I also share my kind of like tops and bottoms for the quarter as well. So this video covers what I read from July through September. I read 16 books, and I'm just going to go through all of my goals kind of like one by one. My first reading goal for the year was to reread more books, and I had set the goal of 1 book each month, and I didn't reread anything from July to September. So that's still a goal that I struggle with every single month. So yeah, this is something that I am still hoping to do more of, but I'm just, for whatever reason, not there yet. The next goal for me this year was to read a graphic novel every month, and I went through a bit of a reading slump, kind of like lack of concentration. I found it difficult to read. This quarter was a little bit rough on me. But I really killed this goal. I think because I was struggling to read, graphic novels and comics were just easier and were just what I was in the mood for. So I read a total of 9 graphic novels. I read Palestine. I read The Girl from the Other Side volumes 2 through 6. I read Walking Dead volume 1, Saga volume 4, and When Stars Are Scattered. And I liked every single graphic novel comic that I read. There were no duds in that list. Obviously some I like more than others, but on the whole, all of those were enjoyable reads. My next goal was to read 1 nonfiction book every month, and I read exactly 1 nonfiction book every month. I read Know My Name by Chanel Miller, Palestine by Joe Sacco, and Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Edo-Lodge. And I enjoyed all of those as well. So my nonfiction reading this quarter was a great success. My next goal, however, was a fail. So I've been wanting to read more poetry collections this year, and I didn't read any from July to September. I think this had a lot to do with my reading slump because poetry is something that I personally really concentrate on. I read it very slowly anyway, so I just think it wasn't something that I was gravitating toward. So it is what it is. My next goal was to read at least 25% from my own shelves, books that I own. So these are either my physical shelves or on my ebook. And I blew this one out of the water. I am so happy that I read actually over 50% books that I own. And I really want to keep up that momentum because I know I shouldn't feel guilty, but I just feel guilty with all of these unread books sitting on my shelf. I want to get through them. So I'm very pleased with that one. My next goal was to read at least 50% from my Goodreads TBR. I know there are a lot of people out there who have like 1,000 books on their Goodreads TBR and it doesn't bother them at all, but I get overwhelmed by really large numbers. And so I'm trying to reduce mine because I'm still adding things to my TBR occasionally, but I'm trying to read more from books that I've already had my eye on than adding new things to my list. So this one I didn't hit. I only read 38% from my Goodreads TBR. So I'm a little disappointed in that. It's not like a huge deal or anything. I think I'm more pleased with reading the books that I own than I am disappointed in not reading things from my like virtual TBR. But it is something I do want to pare down, so better luck next time. My next goal was to read 50% books by Black, Indigenous, or people of color. I set this goal because I audited my reading last year and saw that I was reading incredibly narrowly, and I just didn't feel good about that. I wanted to read from many different people's perspectives. So I set my goal to 50%. And I hit that. I got 51%. That goal is important to me. It's not important in terms of like a quota. Like if I got 49%, like that would also be fine, obviously, but it's more so just for me to like keep my eye on what I'm reading and why, I guess. So it's a little check for me. And my last goal was to read 50% international or Canadian books. And that's because a lot of books are published out of the US and out of the UK. And I wanted to expand to other countries. I put Canada on here as well because I am Canadian and I haven't read a ton of Canadian literature, so I would like to read more of it. And I got really close this time. This is one that I have not hit yet. This is a goal I have not hit yet in any of the quarters, but this is, I think, the closest I've ever got is 49%. So I'm hoping the last quarter I can finally break that. And the only Canadian book I read this quarter, I believe, was Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood, and I loved it and will be continuing on with that series, hopefully very soon. I also DNF'd 2 books. I DNF'd Neuromancer by William Gibson. This was a cyberpunk sci-fi, and it's kind of like, it was a new genre. It was like one of those books that I just felt compelled to read because it introduced so many new things. That's the book that coined the term cyber, I think, or cyberspace. And I just really wanted to read it, but it was so completely and utterly confusing. I found it really messy. And although I don't need to be spoon-fed things, I followed so little of it that I had to stop reading it. I was not enjoying that at all. The other book I DNF'd was Split Tooth by Tanya Tagaq. I actually read this last year, and the reason I wanted to read it again was because I had very mixed feelings last year. I ended the book last year, like when I finished the book, I wasn't sure if I liked it or not. I think there were a lot of things in the book I enjoyed, but there were a lot of things that just didn't work for me. But I was reading it alongside my real life book club, and having that discussion with them about the book actually bumped the book up in my estimation. I was like, yeah, these are really cool things that she's done here. And so it was kind of a bit of a weird reading experience the first time I read it, where I finished it and I was like, what was that? And then I had a chat with friends and kind of reconsidered, like, okay, yeah, no, there were really cool things about this book, but I wanted to read it again. And without the discussion, without my friends there to sway me, I think I came to the conclusion that no, it really is not the book for me. I do think there are a lot of really cool things in the book. I tried it on audio this time, and I think the throat singing and poetry in between the chapters really works on audio really well, but the reading, it's read by the author. The reading of the chapters, like of the narrative, was not doing it for me. The way she narrated it was very bizarre. Every single word carried the same weight. And so then nothing felt important. Nothing felt highlighted. The pacing and the rhythm of the words sounded really off to me. And I think I made it about a third of the way through, and it's a short book, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So yeah, that was kind of a weird experience to DNF a book that I read just last year and thought I had enjoyed a bit more, but upon reread, I just don't think it's my type of book. The last things I want to share with you are my tops and bottoms for the quarter. So my tops, I had a lot of really great reading experiences, but I wanted to limit to like the very top 3 so that I don't just ramble on for 30 minutes. So my tops for this quarter were Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood. This is a dystopian post-apocalyptic book, and I just really loved the tone. I loved the sarcasm and the narrator's voice, the person that we follow. I loved the world building. I loved how it was really cataclysmic and there was so much going on, yet it didn't feel convoluted or over the top. My next top is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I listened to this on audiobook narrated by the author, and if that is something that is available to you, that is how I would recommend reading it as well. It was one of the best nonfiction books I've ever read. It is a memoir, and it recounts her ordeal as the victim of the Stanford rape case and her time in the trial and post-trial, and it just is so exquisitely written. The next top is When Stars Are Scattered by Victoria Jameson and Omar Mohammed. This is mostly a memoir with some fictitious elements in it, and it recounts Omar and his younger brother Hassan's time growing up in a refugee camp. They are both Somali, and they had to flee as very young children, like they were both under 5, and literally grew up for years and years and years in a refugee camp. And it is middle grade, so it's appropriate for most ages. But I'll just tell you that I wept through half of that book. So just be warned that while it is palatable and there's nothing like horribly graphic or anything, it is very, very sad. And I will leave you with the bottoms for the quarter. And I have 3 of these as well. The first is one that I don't actually think is a bad book at all. I just think it just didn't quite work for me in terms of writing style, and that is The Yield by Tara June Winch. I just read this recently, so I will link where I wrapped this up. But in short, I think the story was good, and like the landscape and the setting, and there were so many good parts of this book, and some of the perspectives we follow I thought were really interesting, how the history was doled out in this book, but it was the writing style and how the characters were drawn didn't work for me, and I felt the characters were kept very distant, and I couldn't quite get into the main character's head, so it was disappointing to me. The next bottom is Dracula. I didn't really dislike this book either, but it was a very mixed experience for me. I thought some things about this book were great, and I thought other things were kind of weird and awful, and I just left it feeling like it wasn't a bad book. I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, but I just left this book feeling kind of meh about it, when I really wanted to, you know, feel a little bit more than that, let's just say. And my absolute worst book that I read this quarter, by far, was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. When I say this book is boring, it is so, so boring. It was, in my opinion, not very much more than just lists of different sea creatures that Captain Nemo and the protagonist, I can't even remember his name, Professor something or other, were encountering. So what I thought was going to be a fun adventure on the ocean floor was just like boring species lists. So that was my update on my reading goals. I hit 5 reading goals and failed 4. So it was kind of a middling quarter, but I'm okay with that. 1 quarter to go, and we'll see how I can do. Let me know if you've read any of the books I've talked about. How are your goals going? And we'll chat soon. Take care.